Hello guys, welcome back to the channel, welcome back to the garage, and welcome back to the sled pulling setup. Getting the sled pulling setup ready for the truck. Last episode, we actually got our 35 by 12.5 inch wheels and tires on the truck, converted it to a dually. Definitely looks pretty gnarly like that, but as you can see, I got the bedside off because today we are going to start playing with our hitch. I don't think we are going to get done this today, but we're at least going to, well, I know we're not going to get done because there's other parts we need. But this is our hitch that we got from the guys at Diesel Shop New York that they used in UCC 2019. And this was actually built by Ziegler Diesel Performance out in Ohio. So the plan is to get this onto the truck. There's just a few issues. So this was made for the Diesel Shop's truck, which was pretty much a stock frame truck. I believe they had fiberglass bedsides and all that on it, but they weren't 4-length or anything like that. So we have, our coilover shock mounts are probably going to be in the way. We have our anti-roll bar. We got our panhard bar. We got all kinds of stuff that we're probably going to have to make provisions for. So what we're going to do is try and get this thing on here. And what we're going to do is actually kind of disassemble it. I'll get our brackets so I can get them on the frame. How this thing is set up, because it actually goes right over this part of the frame right here, which it is like a sleeved part of the frame. So it necks down here, gets wider, and then back here it necks down again. So we need to try and fit this on there as best we can. Probably just try and notch it so that way we can get as much plate there as possible. But then we actually have to drill the frame because our sled pulling hitch has 6 half-inch bolts. I believe they're half-inch bolts that we're going to have to drill for. And then we're actually going to have to modify this setup. So as you guys can see, we have the frame part. There's nothing to hold the back end up solid. Now, so like I said, the Diesel Shop New York guys, they had a full frame on their truck and they had modified their frame and actually had these screw pins, and that's how they actually set the height of the hitch up and down. What we are going to be doing is actually making this, I believe it's called a drawbar style hitch. So we're going to actually have 2 bars that come from the axle up to our hitch at an angle, and that's going to support the bottom of the hitch. So when we hook onto the sled, it's pulling on the frame and it's also pushing on the axle itself. So this is something very common you see in the pulling world, but we're going to have to figure it out for our setup because, once again, this was not built for our truck. We're modifying it to work. So we'll get started by taking our hitch apart and see if we can figure out how we can get this thing onto our frame on the drag truck. This thing, once we get the weight box is what's really going to set this thing off. Once we get the weight box on the front, which also provides its own issues, once again, was not made for our truck. And we'll go into that when we get to the weight box. So for now, I'm going to get the heater back on. We're going to get this thing taken apart and see if we can get our hitch at least started this evening. right, so we have our hitch mocked up. I'm very happy with it. It actually was not very hard to fit the brackets to the frame. Basically, I just cut out about an inch here for our tube, and then we had to slot it back here for our anti-roll bar. For our anti-roll bar, I had to slot that, and I went a little too heavy on that slot. But anyhow, on the driver's side, did the same thing, but we also had to accommodate for our brake line bracket and our panhard bar. So that's all in, and everything's looking good. We just have to drill our holes, which that one hole will probably have to be moved because obviously we're going to drill from either side of the frame. Now our hitch. So another thing, we're gonna have to move our shock reservoirs. We'll probably just slide them in the frame here or something, so they're good and out of the way, but as you can see, they would have been a bit in the way. So we'll have to do that. Now our hitch height, I did raise the truck up to the top of the brackets for our Fire Punk 4-link kit. With doing that, we're at, well, 22 inches, but when we pick it up, it's more like 25. So we will be able to get 26 inches is our max hitch height. So what we'll be able to do is, once we get this all bolted in, we'll kind of come up with something like our Dirty Hooker diesel axle stop. So we'll come up with something. We'll come up with something like this. Like I said before, we're not going to be able to use this because of our 4-link, but we'll come up with something that we can put this thing under there, and then we can jack up the truck, and we'll be able to block that axle up so that way we're pulling into the ground as much as possible. So also we need to have maximum of a 25-degree angle, which we're good on the angle. I think ideally for pulling, you're going to want to try and have as much angle as possible. It's just kind of me spitballing. They wouldn't put a maximum angle in there if they didn't want you to not exceed it. Another thing, with jacking the truck up like we did, we still have plenty of room to our bedside. So the truck probably has a good bit of rake to it now. Let me throw this bedside on real quick. We'll take a look. So yeah, definitely a good bit more rake to the truck. It looks pretty cool, I must say. Really getting that whole sled puller vibe. Wheels and tires aren't exactly centered in our wheel wells, but I'm not concerned about that in the least bit. That's going to be blocked up, so we don't have to worry about the suspension compressing or anything and driving that into there. So I'm very happy about that. That when we go to do something like we want to go sled pulling 1 week, don't have to adjust the 4-link and remember where our measurements were, so when we go back to drag racing, everything's right, because drag racing is the main point of the truck. So we'll get the bedside back off, and we'll get to drilling all our holes. So like I said, we're probably gonna have to change where some of these holes are, like that one behind the anti-roll bar, because what I ideally want to do is drill from either side of the frame, for the simple fact it's going to be a lot easier than to try and drill straight through and hope that you hit your mark. So yeah, we're going to have to drill 12 half-inch holes in the frame of the truck. So that's some weight reduction. Not that we're going to need it for doing this, obviously, but yeah, definitely very happy with that we're not going to have to modify a ton of stuff. I originally thought this cross member was going to have to come out, but then when I raised the truck up, we're close enough here on our hitch height that once we jack the truck up, we'll be able to get this thing dialed into the height we need. So yeah, this is, getting this hitch from the guys at Diesel Shop New York was definitely a good idea. It's just making my life a whole lot easier than to have to figure out how to do all this. But like I said, we're gonna have to figure out a way to put like turnbuckles back from this down to the axle. So that will be another night, but we'll see if we can get this all bolted in and be happy. What I'll probably do is actually take this back off, put it on top, just make sure our brackets are exactly where I want them. So yeah, very happy with how this is turning out. Well, we got all of our holes drilled. Everything went smoothly. Bit of a pain in the butt. I was actually able to go right through. I was just worried about, you know, if I cocked the drill and I didn't have it straight, you know, lining up them holes. But, you know, you got 1/4 inch steel here, and then you got, you know, the frame, so it was able to line up nice. I was able to actually just go through from the outside. A couple of them I did have to, you know, finish up inside the frame, but not a big deal. Everything worked out. Re-drilled the holes on the front of the bracket, just so that way we are missing our anti-roll bar. Everything worked out well there. Everything is looking great. Definitely loving it. One thing too, we might have to, when we do go to sled pool, like disconnect our anti-roll bar and our panhard bar. We might have to make an adjustment, though I'm not really worried about the axle being centered necessarily in the frame. It's only going to be off a little bit, so it might just be something that we won't worry about. It's not like you're going to really be able to notice. I have the hitch down about as far as it's going to go, and I got the jack under the forelink, just kind of propping it up, trying to get some measurements for some axle spacers, something to keep this thing from squatting. Also, I was saying before about how we put our brackets all the way up for our coilovers. Well, I forgot these fire punk brackets actually have like 5 holes in them, so we could go up higher with those, just so we're not completely stretching out our Menser coilovers, which we can do. I mean, it's not really an issue. The coilovers are just kind of along for the ride for this particular, you know, for sled pulling, because we're going to block the axle, like I said. But I have the hitch down as far as it'll go. We're below our 25-degree angle, so we're good there. We're good to the center of the axle. I think we need to be a minimum of 44 inches, and we're about 45. If there's any question about that, we have room where we can adjust our forelink up and move the axle forward to get everything exactly where we need it to be. So I'm not worried about any of that. Everything's looking good. Our only adjustment, like I said before, we're gonna have to move our reservoirs for our coilovers. But other than that, I'm definitely digging the setup. I think it looks good. We have to put some bars going down to the axle, and that'll be what keeps this thing from moving, you know, down or whatever, because we don't obviously want it pressing on our cross member. But yeah, everything's looking good. Now, like I said, I have the jack underneath over there to get this thing kind of at ride height, and where it's sitting now, we're about 26 inches off the ground on our hitch, so we're good there. But if we step out here, I was talking about having a little bit of a rake earlier, I think, and yeah, with it sitting up, like where I want it to sit, this thing has a big old rake to it. I mean, it just screams sled pulling truck. I mean, it looks awesome. Wow, that's yeah, quite the rake we got there. And then once we get our weight box on the front, hopefully we have enough weight on the rear of the truck that it's not trying to, you know, do an endo on us. But yeah, this thing, I mean, look at that rake it's got to it. It just looks gnarly. This thing is going to look cool with the duals and just kind of propped up like that. Yeah, really excited to see this thing outside, like I said previously, and see it with its full sled pulling trim. So making progress on our hitch tonight. Really happy with the progress. Those holes are just a pain. They end up being 5/8. They weren't 1/2 inch, they were 5/8. So I had to go back and drill a couple of them over there at the beginning. Luckily, I realized when I first started. I just kind of looked at the bolts and said, oh, they're 1/2 inch. Well, anyway, so we got all our bolts in. We have a, you know, kind of have our setup as far as height goes, distance from the axle, all that kind of stuff. Everything's kind of just falling in place. That hitch that Ziegler Diesel Performance out in Ohio made for the guys up at Diesel Shop in New York is definitely working out great for us as far as fitting in the truck. Really just slight modifications, nothing major, and it just, you know, it's nice to be able to do something and it's not a complete hassle. So, you know, big shout out to those guys and for helping us out with getting this, so that way, you know, just one less thing we have to completely build from scratch. So very happy with how the truck's turning out. A little bit more to do on the sled pulling setup here in the rear. Probably one more video on that, and then we'll get to the weight box in the front, which is going to be a bit of a interesting one, because one thing, if you guys notice, if you guys have watched UCC in the past, majority of the trucks there, the front bumper is removable. The problem is our front bumper is actually where our hinge is, so we can hinge the front clip of the truck. So we're gonna have to drop that thing down, and when the weight box is on there, I don't think the front clip's gonna be able to open up. So that I'm not really a fan of, but it is what it is. If something were to happen while we were sled pulling, it's not like you can just pop this thing off quick enough. You know, if there's a fire or something, they'd have to just get fire extinguishers underneath it, but that's not gonna happen. But yeah, it's just one of those things. When we were building the truck, yes, this was kind of my goal, but I never thought about that. One thing I completely just neglected. We could put holes in the front clip just for our weight box, but I don't know how much of a fan of that I am either. So I got to figure that all out. Just take a little bit of thought and kind of get that thing up there, see where the measurements are, all that. Have the truck raked how it's going to be, and you know, just see where the weight box falls. Also, that weight box can only be so far out from the front axle. So anyhow, I know I'm kind of rambling here, just some stuff to look forward to in the future. Once again, the whole sled pulling thing, I don't know anything about. Got some people helping us in the background, like I said. Guys from Diesel Shop New York and Ziegler Diesel Performance definitely giving me some pointers and helping us out with the sled pulling setup. So thank you guys, I really appreciate it. So anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you're excited to see this thing in full sled pull trim as much as I am. But anyway, it's a school night. Get out in your garage, get the wrenching on your truck. Like the video, subscribe down below. Catch you guys on the next one.